Hello and welcome back to Shatter Our Souls with Novaria. Now, as I'm sure you've noticed, we're back with Metroid Prime on Hypermode. Today, I'm hoping to take out another half an hour or so of the game, and hopefully, for those in the know, make it to potentially Phendrana Drift. Anyways, um, with last time being what it was, I figured I'd dive in a little bit as far as the lore. Now, the lore of Metroid Prime is scattered about in walls and text boxes, so to speak, as a means of conveying more information for those who are looking for it. The game is only as deep or as open-minded. That's not the right word. It, it is only shows itself to those who are willing to look for it. So, the lore of the game, in and of itself, comes with the mentality that the Chozo that came to Talon 4 know not when they arrived or anything like that, only that this is their current home planet and that they are searching for a means of understanding the world through time. The rifts of time and how it functions is, in their mind, where the secrets of the universe are held. Now, as you can see, we just caught ourselves the charge beam, which is going to be a huge boost for the next boss. The next boss is the incinerator drone, so that should be pretty reasonable, I think, now, because each shot, in theory, should be able to do roughly about a quarter of its health if my expectation is accurate. But going on with what I said, they had developed a sense of foresight, a means of looking into the future that, in their minds, showed that they were transcending what a average human, or Chozo, was actually capable of and becoming one with the universe as a whole. I like this mentality for them. It changes the dynamic of the Chozo from being warmongering and whatnot to being more pacifist in nature, silent observers rather than battle hungry. Now, I say this knowing flat out that Samus is using their technology in a battle circumstance, but as things are, it's kind of a small note or a footnote in how the Chozo have been developed over the years. The original versions of the Chozo that we had gotten were effectively non existent. The first couple of games, up until I believe it would have been Super Metroid, didn't really elaborate on the technology, only pushing that the technology that was in Samus's suit was of Chozo origin. Which is to say, pretty small details overall. We find out that part of Samus's strength comes from the fact that her DNA was augmented with Chozo DNA in order to allow her to be stronger, faster, and be more compatible with their tech. Anywho, it's time to take on the incinerator drone. Now, I'll be honest, this is kind of one of the more underwhelming bosses, simply because it's, well, you can see it. It's a tower in the center of the room that is malfunctioning and shooting out flames everywhere. And the battle itself kind of just devolves into a Mario Party minigame of red hop jump rope, which on its own isn't a terrible thing, but for the longest time I didn't even realize this was a boss. So I suppose that speaks to its difficulty as well as its design. Speaking of game design, I wanted to get a little bit into what I think makes Metroid Prime and the Prime trilogy as special as it is. So, for a lot of first person games, and I'm going to use that terminology here, as it is classified as a first person adventure. Generally, most of the time, first person adventures have the mentality that it's all about getting from, or it's all about your reaction speed, your aim, etc. Now, with the original game and the direction they went with the control scheme, the pinpoint accuracy that you'd see in a lot of the first person games of today simply was not feasible. So instead, they opted for a gameplay style that focused more on movement and momentum, being able to avoid damage rather than focusing on dealing damage. And while that might seem like a very trivial or small detail, it actually makes a huge difference for how people approach the game. Because oh geez, come on, get in the hole. The way people approach the game, if they are approaching it like a um, current modern first person video game, they're going to be woefully underwhelmed. If you approach it from the standing that this is about discovery and adventure, then more subtle details start to show themselves. The decay in the world, it shows off the lore and the world building in a much more coherent capacity. And I think that really stands to the development team's understanding of their control scheme, at least their original one. Now, the Prime trilogy controls that I'm using focus in on the same control scheme that Metroid Prime 3 had. And honestly, Prime 3 had some glitches and bugs in its controls to be certain, but it is much closer to a standard or traditional, or not traditional, a more standard approach to the um, first person genres of today, or at least of, I guess, 2009 when this was made. Really, I'm aging myself here. Um, anyways, so with that in mind, where did I miss the thing? It Okay, really? Where is it? Get over here. I can't hear myself think over the war wasps. Get out of here, war wasps. Um, as I was getting at, with that in mind, the control scheme is very kind of 50-50. Some people love it, some people don't. And it all depends on how much you liked the point and shoot controls of the Nintendo Wii's first person genres. However, there's another layer to this. And this third layer is okay, I'm sure I'll find this third or fourth rune if I just start from the beginning, so that's what I think I'm gonna do. I'm I know I missed it somewhere, and it's silly that I did, but I can't really do much about that at this point, and yeah, it's kind of a little on the frustrating side, because I'm pretty sure I'm right above it or right nearby, but I can't for the life of me remember where it is. Well, as I've said in the past, this is what I get for talking while driving, or in this case, talking while gaming. The remastered version of Metroid Prime has a very different approach on the controls. Oh, yep, there it is. In that they have a third or a modified control scheme for those that are interested in a more quote unquote modern first person adventure control scheme. And it's the dual analog style. I'll admit sometimes the dual analog fits me great and sometimes it really doesn't. I'm not sure how it would fit Prime. Um, I'd be interested in finding out, and I'm sure I will when Prime 4 comes around. But I'll be honest, I don't see myself turning away from the point and shoot controls if I can help it. Which seems kind of weird to say out loud, but yeah, that's kind of what it is. Yeah, gross. Anywho, welcome, one and all, to the fifth boss of the game, Flaaghra. Now, Flaaghra for me was actually the first roadblock I came across in my initial run of the game. Partially because I didn't understand how to do damage to it initially, which is a rather sad aspect. Flaaghra's fighting style is that you need to knock out the solar panels. Solar panels? Eh, I'm not sure what they'd be called right now, but basically, solar reflectors. They reflect sunlight directly on Flaaghra. Because of Flaaghra's immense size, if it does not have direct, constant, and, dare I say, increased sunlight, it will wither away. Thus, it needs these at all times. Why such a massive plant has such a underwhelming root system is beyond me, but it does, and that's we just got to deal with it. Hey, no. I'm trying to do my job here, and massive angry plants is not part of the deal. Okay, so 1 and 2, beautiful shot from across the arena there. And big plant goes down. We're just gonna plant a bomb at its base and move on. One thing I love about Flaaghra and its design as well as the lore surrounding it is that all of the toxic water we've been coming across has been generated from Flaaghra. This is effectively the major boss of this area, as it's the most notable beast in the area in terms of the world's lore and world building. Because Flaaghra's entire point is that it is either strengthening or weakening the other world's entities by taking away access to clean water. That's its job, which seems ridiculous when you look at it. But as I'll get into later on in the game, there's more to it than just that. Every aspect of the world and the bosses, or at least the ones that are augmented by Phazon, all have a few common notable derivatives coming from them, and that they are defenders of something or are affected by something major going on within the world itself. Case in point, the big angry plant. Now, as I said, Flaaghra is a defender, but it is also there to cause trouble for those around it, for the Chozo, for the beings on the planet itself. Because of its immense size and how quickly it grew, it also has significantly higher necessity for nutrients, as well as significantly higher need for sunlight compared to your average plant on Talon 4. Anywho, with the last kaboom, we have beaten the fifth boss with only I guess 25-ish health damage taken? I wasn't actually counting, but I know I was never in a danger zone, which is pretty nice, all things considered. And glorious cutscene of the beastie struggling and fresh water being released back into the world. All the toxins are being reabsorbed into the plant itself. How? I have no idea, but the filtration system that it is based on is starting to work the way it's intended once again. And we gain our next notable power up. I'm just going to let this play out. Nice to get the Varia suit back. With the Varia suit in hand, it is now time to enter a new main area. Why am I struggling to get up this wall? Am I missing something? Yeah, I must be having a bit of a bad day today. Anywho, it is now time to enter Magmoor Caverns. Now, Magmoor Caverns is effectively the world's fire level. It's meant to be pretty formulaic in its approach, but I find that honestly, Metroid Prime gives a feeling of awe with every single locale. I'm actually going to take a quick detour here. There's a power up I want to grab before hitting the Magmoor Caverns. Because if I'm being honest, I don't like the idea of going into a situation underprepared. And I think that is something that would be echoed in Samus's mentality. Preparation is key, but as a general statement, she's also known for going into battle, even if she is underprepared, because who else would? First things first, we're going to open the 3 locks on this beastie. And we'll get ourselves a missile tank. And then we're going to get a health upgrade. Which, with health and missiles, means longevity and damage, and guaranteed damage over time. Oh, sorry, having a little controller issues here. My nunchuck is acting up. Suppose that's what I get for using 15-year-old tech for this, but again, oh well. It is as it is. I admit that this is probably one of my favorite rooms, just because of like the sparkling, glittering gold into the sidelines. Like you can tell that the devs put a lot of effort into their world building. And I love that about Prime. I wish that more games had this level of care put towards the worlds. Anyways, just a little bit of backtracking, and then we're going to hit Magmoor Caverns. Something that I've kind of been, I suppose, wanting to talk about is the fact that I admit that Metroid Prime was not my first Metroid game. In fact, far from it. My first Metroid game was Prime 3. And a lot of people might say that's a little bit of a divisive start to the franchise. Now, at this point in time, close to 14 years after I discovered it, I've beaten every Metroid game except the 3DS Return of Samus. But the thing is that this series, it grew and evolved over time, and each new game, new iteration of this character, saw a lot of development in terms of how the games as a whole worked. Now, if you are a fan of the Metroid franchise, I recommend a YouTuber by the nickname of the Geek Critique, who spent a lot of time, actually an entire season worth of videos on the Metroid franchise. And I admit that a lot of the ideologies that are brought up in that are echoed, I think, by a lot of our community. It shows a little or a lot about how the character grew, how the world building, as well as how the gameplay progressed over time. Which, honestly, I think is fantastic. The ironic side of things is that one of the games that came out around the same time as Prime was Metroid Fusion. Now, ironically, of the two of the games, the one that had a more of a departure from the Metroid formula was Fusion. Samus in Fusion was weak, at least comparatively to the prior appearances in the franchise. And that was done, I think, intentionally. Prime, on the other hand, shows Samus near what I consider to be the peak of her strength. She was never meant to be a uh, she's not vulnerable in Prime like she is in some of the other games. And I use vulnerability as a little bit of a odd statement here because ironically, you start the game with half of your upgrades and whatnot, and you're more than capable. But the thing is that Samus in Prime is never pushed to her limits until the very end of the game. Where I feel that some of the other games in the franchise, notably Fusion, have or push Samus a lot harder than Prime does. And that might just be the fact that, by and large, games that are 3D are often easier than 2D games because it is less possible to determine the exact path that you take. But that might be me looking into it a little too hard, a little too far. In Prime, I've always felt that I was in control, that I was more than capable, more than strong enough to handle whatever came my way, that I could throw myself at any challenge as long as, I had some semblance of thought involved and was half paying attention. I could do it. Because Samus is not a vulnerable character. Samus is this strong, independent monster of a person. She's not afraid to lay down the law and fight for what she believes in, regardless of how many groups, how many people she has to go through to get what she believes to be right. She also doesn't like injustice, something that I feel crops up in her character quite a lot in the later parts of the franchise's timeline, notably Metroid Dread. All of this to say that there's so much beneath the surface of of this game and these franchise that the analysis of the character could be a video in and of itself, which honestly is a testament to the franchise. Okay, we got 2 more rooms, I think, before we'll have access to Phendrana Drifts. And right on path for, or right on cue for what I was aiming for. we're getting into about an hour of in-game time. Now, comparing my in-game time versus a task or a tool-assisted speed run, a tool assist would be able to beat the entire game in, I believe it's like an hour 30. Forgive me if my memory's a little bit hazy on the subject. But what that means is that in the time that you have seen this, and my opinions cropping up throughout, it is possible for a tool assist to get to the point where it has nearly completed the game in its entirety, which is actually amazing in terms of how far the game has been pushed in the past iterations of it. Oh, wait, there's a upgrade up here, I think. Anywho. If there is anything that you would like to see to improve my channel, improve the videos that crop up, as well as how everything kind of fits together like a glove, I'd love to hear it. I'm always open to suggestions and I want to continue to see this channel grow and prosper, and I'll take suggestions wherever they are. Now, all of this being said, we are probably rounding in on the end of the video. If I recall, there's a save station just ahead. Phendrana Drifts, or at least this side of it, is my favorite area of the game. And normally I don't say that kind of stuff about an ice level. Usually ice and water levels are the ones that get botched, but this is absolutely magical. Anywho, if you like what you see, drop a like, leave a subscribe, and we'll catch you next time.